Hi guys, and welcome to Daydream in Digital. I'm your host, Britt Brewer, a digital marketer with a decade of experience from the agency and corporate worlds. Now I help creatives turn their daydreams of starting and scaling an online business into reality. Tune in weekly for actionable tips, fun conversations, and takeaways to help you map out your marketing mountain, master your mindset, and scale that daydream to the top. Thanks for tuning in. Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm here with Ashley DeLuca. She is an email communication strategist and we both love email. So we are here to drive on all things email and give you some great tips and things to move forward. Ashley, how are you?
I am doing awesome. How are you?
Doing good, thank you. It's definitely a Monday, but it's a really good one.
Yes, fully caffeinated. I am here for all of it.
Awesome. Thank you. That's great. So tell me a little more about you, your business, how you got started.
Oh my gosh, totally. So my journey actually started back when I was around 14 years old. I went through the process of building websites from library books. And essentially what ended up happening is I started my first blog. I don't recommend finding it. It's just filled with 14-year-old girl thoughts. I don't even know if it's still alive, but I know people can find the weirdest, craziest things from all the things.
They can.
And so, yeah. And so what ended up happening is I went through corporate. I went through like getting the corporate job, going to college, all of that amazingness, and realized that the dream that I was sold was not exactly the dream I had signed up for. And so I ended up really diving more so into starting my own business. Started from Panera, actually, with my best friend, Cece. We ended up going through and we were just kind of outlining what were our dreams, what do we really want to do? And she was like, Ashley, you could just go do that right now, right? And I was like, what do you mean I can just go do this right now? And so ended up starting my very first business. And from there, I ended up learning about websites and even more so email marketing from that. And so as people were asking me to ask or basically input their opt-in forms and all the things, I was like, what in the world is this? Like, what in the world, And it wasn't until I really dove into the email marketing side that I realized there was a huge place for us to be able to build relationships and also create two-way communication streets from email marketing.
Definitely. Yeah, there's so many options out there.
Definitely.
And what did you learn? What was different from like working corporate and doing that versus now working with your clients?
Oh my gosh, it is a complete 360 in terms of with before. So I was having to drive about an hour and a half to my job. We ended up moving out into a really rural area because that's where my husband really wanted to be. And that was just kind of what worked best for us is being out in the middle of kind of nowhere to be able to have that peace and quiet and all that really fun stuff. And so we ended up moving into, this hour and a half commute. I got pregnant. And this is when I was like, oh my gosh, I'm having to stop 30 times to go to the bathroom, first of all. But even more so than that, in terms of with the day to day, it's completely and utterly different in terms of with even how I feel physically. And one of the biggest things is that when I was in my corporate job, I actually was moved one time because at this point I was in like a desk sitting job, and I ended up getting moved because I was too loud. And I was, constantly on calls all day with clients and going through this process of being like, okay, like doing the things. And I am a very passionate person. I talk very loudly as my passion rises. And that passion can be good passion, or it can also be like, dude, come on, let's use our brain cells here, passion. And so I ended up getting moved. And that was kind of like that huge cornerstone moment for me of like, I don't fit into this world. I don't fit into this box. And it's not necessarily like I don't do what I'm told, but it's very much so I felt so incredibly limited based off of my passions and my skills. And I felt like when I shared ideas, they were just thrown into the wind. And even the things that were implemented, like it was just down a corporate chain that I was just like, this is so dumb. Like this, like, because my brain works in business mode. And, even as I got into that specific position I'm talking about now, like my brain was always into like, how can we improve the customer experience? How can we make this so the customer doesn't have to call back and like this person doesn't have to go through this? And they're just like, well, it's fine. I was like, no, it's not fine. Like, we can just like totally change all of this. And so, I mean, in terms of with now, like I'm fully at home with my son. I do have the opportunity. I go out on Mondays to the coffee shop or the library and work because my husband, he is off on Mondays. So it works really well to have, you know, I still have the energy of the world. I still have quiet time and all of that really fun stuff. But the majority of the time I'm home, I'm with my kid. I do very much so work-life balance with my kiddo. And that fills my soul. It fills me. And that's exactly what I dreamed of having happen. So yeah.
That's great. That's awesome. I feel like I have a similar story. Like I have more time now with my kids and
Yeah.
a corporate. I definitely feel that working at agencies and corporations was so important to get started and to learn everything. And
Totally.
I learned from people. I have a network of people now, but it just didn't always feel right. And none of my jobs, even the jobs where I worked with like the very best people that I loved so much, like
Yeah.
it just, it felt like everything had to be so thought through and like, oh, we have to wait, we have to send that up. And I just wanted to do it then, do it now and see how it
Yeah.
went. I was a lot the same way. So
Yeah. I
it's
can
amazing to hear.
totally relate to that. And I think also too, it's one of those things where like I felt like my potential was so limited and I wasn't really recognized for my gifts. And now I also feel like I have a much bigger impact on what I can do because because in my specific role in corporate, I don't like to speak for everybody, but like in my specific role, my income was capped. I was like, this is all I'm making in a year. Like, yeah, I can work overtime, but like sometimes like who wants to do that, especially when they're pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me, it was very much so now my ability to impact people is now limitless at this point. It's not necessarily constructed to, well, like, oh, I can only put $20 in the offering plate this week or $20 to my favorite charity. It's more so like, oh my gosh, like my income has expanded, which allows me to give expandedly as well too.
Oh, that's such a nice way to put it too. That's so true. The more kind of effort you put in or how things might be going, you can kind of shift things around a little bit or just go on vacation and, not worry about that job. You can set it up so that you can take a little break or it's
Exactly.
amazing. So there are so many moms that I talk to, and I think just because it's really near and dear to my heart, it was always tough having a job and being a mom from the very beginning. My daughter's now 3.5, and that's what really inspired me too to finally like make this a thing, not just as freelance on the side. How do you? What would you tell those moms? Like, how do you manage it? How do you feel about when you were first starting? Like,
Mm-hmm.
give them some inspiration.
Yes. Okay. So here's the thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually didn't learn this right away. This is actually something that came to me a little bit later on into my entrepreneurial career. But if I could go back, my very first thing that I would do is set boundaries. One of the biggest mistakes that I made, and I did, like I only took my mom and I debate. I only took maybe like a 2-day maternity leave. It was like the weekend. And that was it. Like my mom was like, you were still working while you're in the hospital bed. And I was like, I was reading a business book. I don't consider that working. But she's like, that's still a business book. Because I was induced, all the great things. But anyways, boundaries are so incredibly important because I never turned off the off switch. And so I was literally burning the candle at both ends. I was exhausted. I was tired. I literally was like working when, I like started my day all the way to the end of my day. And then I also, at the time I was breastfeeding. And so like for us, breastfeeding mothers, we all know, and even like all through the night, like all of it.
It's already nonstop. That's already a job.
It is completely. And my husband's like, I don't know what you want to do with this little potato thing. And now it's a lot easier because like Nick is much more energetic and happy and talks and all that. And he's like, oh, I totally got this. And I was like, oh, I could have used that when he was like 1 month old. But boundaries. And boundaries can look like a couple different ways. I think for you specifically, it's really more so about figuring out where are your leaky areas where things kind of get blurred. And so for me, it was separating work and life completely because I worked from home, and it can be really easy just to pop over for a second and do the things. Or, you know, like for me, I do a lot of stuff on social media and just talking and like interacting. And I'm like, oh, I can be doing this while I like sit on the couch with Nick. And it really is about enforcing those boundaries and being like, hey, Ashley, like to me personally, be like, hey, my work hours are generally speaking from 10 to 5. Like anywhere around that is totally fine. Now, I don't work like straight through or anything like that because like I do have Nick, so I have lots of interruptions. So I plan for that. But figure out what your work hours are going to be. Whether it is I only work during nap time, I only work during lunch break, I only work in the mornings, or whatever that is, and stick to it. One of the things that I always thought was that my limited availability would set me back. But your limited availability shows your clients or whoever it is that you may be working with that you are very strong and very effective in your amount of time. And a lot of times people, and I don't know the exact words for it, but they're like, you fill the amount of time you set for something. So if you're going to clean your house for 2 hours, it's going to take you 2 hours to clean your house. And so just like with your work as well too. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is go deep into one thing, like one specific offering, one specific platform, one specific target audience, one specific all the way around. One of the biggest things that I did when I started off is I did hashtag all the things. And you'll hear me say hashtag all the things because it's very much so engraved into my messaging and my brain, and I'm working on it. I'm not saying that, but like very much so I did everything. I was on Pinterest, Instagram, Facebook, all the things. And it wasn't until I went fully in on Facebook into my email that it allowed me to be able to really grow and scale and to be able to do the things with like one thing. So set your boundaries and go all in on one thing.
Those are really, really great tips. I love that. It's awesome. And it's so different from like, if you are coming from that other environment, it's not something I think that people would automatically learn in a way. You just have to kind of work through it. So
yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I did. I mean, I sweated and teared and cried and was like, why is my business not growing? Why is it not doing anything? You know, and it wasn't literally until I got very specific on who I want to help. And I even do that now. So it's not, I mean, it's something that stuck with me. And I didn't actually get back onto Instagram until earlier this year when I was like, I really want to be on stories. Like that sounds so much fun. And just leaning into that is really important.
It is, yeah. I think having those boundaries too just creates that like mindset block, and it allows you to sort of just proceed forward with what you need and not be kind of bogged down in a way. Like I'm finding that, you know, setting those work hours, I've done the same like with my calendar events, and then I've set it mentally on my personal calendar too. And it's like, it feels so amazing to have these open days, and I want to be 100% there for my kids when I'm there with my kids kind of thing.
Yeah.
And otherwise, when I was trying to do the multitask and be like, oh, I got to hop on Instagram, I got to do this, I got to engage, it just ruined the entire day. I was not feeling the day. I wasn't feeling my mood, none of it. So I love that. It's super important.
Totally, 100%.
Boundaries. I connect with that too. So tell me all about email. So when we first talked, you told me about a new tool called Active Campaign. I was one of those who'd used MailChimp, Campaign Monitor. HubSpot is one of my favorites. And you actually got me over to Active Campaign. I love it now. I'm so excited. It's the perfect tool for kind of what I'm doing and where my business is. And I feel like it could be a great option for a lot of people. Tell me more about email and why you love it.
Oh my gosh. So I love email specifically because email is a very great way to intentionally create a journey for your people. And one of the things that I found is that with social media, the attention span is so short and people are just constantly just stuck into the scroll. They may see your post, but they're not actually taking it in. You're fighting the algorithm, the reach, all of the things. And so, you know, I had tried the social media thing. I thought the social media thing was going to be my jam. Like when I was like back in my corporate career, I was like, I just want to do social media. And it wasn't until I realized that I was like, I don't like the algorithm. This is so dumb. That I then got into email. And, you know, within that, I decided to go head on because I was like, man, this is a great way to be able to go really deep with my people and to give them a side of me that maybe necessarily I wouldn't want to share with the entire world, but which is like my select group of people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, within email marketing, you're really just focusing on, at the end of the day, you can get into the numbers of like open and click and all of that really fun stuff. But really, it just comes down to showing up consistently and creating a two-way street with them. And it's like the easiest way that I have found to create sales, to be able to build relationships without having to, again, fight the algorithm and get down because you only got 10 likes on your social media post.
Mm-hmm. Of course. I hear the kiddo in the background. Your son. Yeah. So when you're talking about email, just so everybody can picture it a bit, are you, do you mean specifically, say, one-to-one emails, like personal, direct emails with people you've met or not met, but, chatted with online, like broadcasts, nurture campaigns? Dig more into that and how it fits into your overall strategy and the different types of emails.
Totally. So we're going to take basically the concept of a one-to-one email. That's the whole idea. That's how you stick out, because most people, when they send broadcasts, they spray everybody. They're just like, we're just going to hit one and done. And that's where newsletters come in, because newsletters were created with the intention and the idea that we're going to include one little thing that might capture that one person to move them on over into our sales funnel.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't work because they're not personalized at all. So we're going to take the concept and idea of sending a one-to-one campaign and specifically putting it into an email marketing platform such as ConvertKit, ActiveCampaign, MailerLite, depending on your needs for your business, you'll pick one of those. And within that, you're then able to create an intentional journey. So there's two fronts to it. You have your back end and then you have your front end. Your back end is more so of your automation. So think about like when you check out like something on Amazon and you get an order receipt and then they tell you it's shipped and then they come back and they ask for a review. Things like that are automatically done, filled in with your information. And so we have the back end piece of it. Usually the top 3 sequences that you'll want to have is a welcome sequence. A welcome sequence takes them from the initial opt-in of your list, whether you're doing a small paid offer, whether you're doing a free offer, or even just asking for email addresses from your website, to an actual like first initial touch offer. And then that's one sequence. The second sequence that I recommend is a fulfillment sequence, which is after they purchase. Depending on your business, depending on the needs, it can be, 60 emails or it could be 3 emails. Like that one is very extremely custom to your journey and what touch points that person is already maybe receiving outside of the email side of things. And then the last piece of it is a re-engagement sequence, because we want to make sure that people who do go cold have a way to be able to re-engage back into your list, or are automatically removed from your list, and you don't have to worry about having a dead email list that impacts your deliverability. So that's like the back end. Front end is very much so your kind of you can do this a couple different ways. You can send all to your list, or you can get specific and create segments and targets inside of your list as well too. But generally speaking, especially if you're just starting off, it's okay to hit all, minus those who had already purchased from you, and send email like weekly emails or even monthly emails out to them as well.
Mm-hmm. Great. That is a great overview too. So what are some of those specific automations that you set up? If people are just getting started, you mentioned the 3 that they should have to get going.
Yeah.
Would you prioritize one over the other, or how would you recommend people really get started? Let's say they've got the platform going and they're just not sure where to begin.
Totally. 100% make sure you start with the welcome sequence. The only kind of reason or kind of like other route that I would take is if you already have a good chunk of clients coming in, like the people that are coming into your world are actually like buyers, then what I would do, I would actually start with the fulfillment sequence first, because we want to then focus on retention. So if you currently already have people coming into your world who are already purchasing and you're funneling them into your email stuff, retention. Otherwise, definitely the welcome sequence. The re-engagement sequence can be done at any time. It's just always nice to have, once you hit that 90-day mark of consistently emailing them on the front end, that you have something to be able to back them up to be able to re-engage them.
Awesome. So kind of like prioritizing where most of the clients or the contacts on the email list are, where you're going to get the most bang for your buck to start.
Exactly.
Great. That is awesome. And so you talked about the funnel and how email fits into the funnel. That's something I love to work on with clients too, is thinking about where email fits in along with everything else, maybe retargeting, or they have a specific ad campaign, and it not keeping everything like so individualized and sort of thinking it through. So how do you map that out, and how do you recommend people, really start to see that bigger picture when it comes to email, make sure that wires don't cross, and what are your go-tos? How do you keep that organized?
Yeah, totally. This is a great question. And a lot of times when I come in, it's for cleanup work. To clean
Very
up all of
important.
the cross wires and all the things. And it's really incredibly important to start off simple. And a lot of times we think, oh, well, simple isn't as effective, or I could be doing more. And we can always be doing more in all the things. But it's really about, again, making it super incredibly easy to segment and keep things, not aligned. So when you have things that are currently in that spot where you're just like, oh my gosh, none of the things are aligning, it's all over the place, and you're just like, oh my gosh, like, what do you even do? The very first thing that I do is I actually go outside of the email stuff and I map out the starting to the ending, because that's really what it's all about. It's all about understanding where are people coming in your list, what are the entry points, and then looking at what are the end points. And so if you're keeping this super incredibly simple, you'll have one entry point and one offer point, to keep it super simple, right? Within that one
Right.
straight train. So then within that, that, okay, cool. When people come in, they're going to go through a welcome sequence. And then what you can do is you can easily just set up two segments. You'll have a non-buyer segment and then a buyer segment, which essentially will divide your list based off of customers versus non-customers, right? And so what that does is that easily allows you to be able to segment out, when you're doing your weekly campaigns, all the people who are currently customers in your world. You can then move over and be like, okay, cool, awesome. Anyone who is in this funnel, you can automatically have it so that way they are tagged, as in there's a lot of different ways you can do this, but like you could say in funnel, and then you could say the offer name essentially. And then you can segment them out based off of, if anyone is in this funnel, they don't get anything else, where you can auto unsubscribe them, which is super easy to do in active campaign. You just have the tag, and then you have auto unsubscribe from all the other automations, or leave all automations. And so that makes it so that way it's not a lot of confusion. It's not a lot of other pieces, but realistically start one at a time. If you are someone who has multiple offers, focus on one funnel at a time in terms of with start to finish, and then finish to the next one. So that way you have a complete journey laid out without all of the other pieces. When it comes to the tags that are associated with that, because I did talk about segments, the tagging piece, just keep it as simple as possible. You don't need to track the people who click on over to your Instagram or Facebook. Just simply track the people who are actually making their way over to the offer. Or also too, you can track like, oh, if you have an application form or a booking link, track the people who click that, because that's where your money's at, not necessarily the people who are going to go follow you on Instagram.
That's a really, really great tip. Finding those points that are going to be helpful, and knowing that that might be a warm lead, or it is a warm lead that kind of designates them as one.
Exactly, 100%.
One other thing I really liked about Active Campaign that a lot of email tools don't offer is that ability to track website behavior. I've really only seen that on the bigger ones like HubSpot or Salesforce, and not so much on a lot of the more simple, I guess, more startup tools.
Yep.
That makes it really amazing. Do you recommend that people utilize those interest buckets and sort of look at email preferences and email targeting and things like that as well, or a little bit later on in their journey?
Yeah, usually a little bit later on. I mean, the biggest thing is that my main goal is conversion, in terms of with getting them from point A to point B. So anything that will give me additional information to help that, I'm all for. Everything else, I'm just kind of like, okay, this is great to know, but I always am looking at how can I move people through that journey. Or on the flip side, I also look at it as well too, in terms of with like, not necessarily just conversion, but engagement. Because the thing is that an engaged community buys. And so anything that I can do to be able to track that engagement, which is mainly just through click rate, is what I work towards and move towards as well too.
Awesome. That's great. And then let's say, so you've got everything mapped out. Everyone gets their welcome series set up. They've got a few simple automation opt-ins. Things are running. How do you work with clients to make sure that, they're looking at email as a piece of that picture? Middle of the funnel on, how are they building it out from there? and making sure it's integrated? Or do you feel email really is where they should spend maybe 80% of their time?
Yeah, so for me, email is definitely part of that ecosystem. But within that, most of the time, my clients, they focus on their preferred social media platform or platforms to be able to garner that attention. And since it is part of the middle funnel, generally speaking, a lot of times, the back end is already set up, ideally, in terms with bringing people through retention, all of that really fun stuff, that the only focus they really have is those weekly campaigns and making sure that they're being consistent with that, or not necessarily weekly, whatever that, not the consistency piece. Oh my gosh, my brain just like totally tooted.
It is afternoon.
I was like, I'm still finishing my second cup of coffee. It's not the consistency, it's the timing, essentially, like how you're going to be consistent essentially within your timing. And so regardless if you choose frequency, that's the word. If it is monthly or weekly or bi-weekly, whatever that is, I just tell people to be consistent in whatever it is that they're doing. But within that frequency, usually that's all they have to worry about. And then within the back end, a lot of times you can just pull reports from that and then tweak accordingly. And so that way they can move their attention to garnering that, the attention for their business, and knowing that all they have to do is simple tweaks and then the campaign frequency that they choose.
Wow. Okay. It can almost sound complicated, but it is not, right?
Yeah, totally.
They can do it.
Yes, 100%. And that's the thing as well. And that's really a big piece of my journey, is that for me, it really is about that freedom within life, right? And being able, and I don't ever preach that like, the gold is in the list and like all you have to do is have the email, because there is so much more to business in terms of with connections and conversations and things that happen outside of email. But email is a huge tool in helping create that intentional touch point in that customer journey.
Mm-hmm. It is. It's crazy to think that years ago, everything was trying to say that email was going away. It's not relevant. Everybody filters it and deletes, but it's still alive. It's the biggest converting channel, I think, still. Don't quote me there, but
yeah,
it's definitely one of the top.
Yes, 100%.
Well, great. I'm so excited for everyone to kind of get started on setting up an email campaign, or getting their first broadcast out, or setting up that email nurture, their welcome series. Any recommendations you have in terms of when they're creating that first email? Or, one thing I really like to do in my business right now is not overthink everything. You've got your branding, you've got your message. I've learned over the years, it's just execute and go. And with email especially, you can test and you can see how things are going. What kind of advice would you give everybody when they're thinking of that design of the email and the message, those really important pieces?
Totally. Yeah. So in terms of if we were planning out your campaigns, the first thing that I look at is, okay, cool. How much value are we giving versus sales? And so I always recommend Gary Vee's method of the jab, 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 right hook. So it's basically a 3-1 method in terms of with 3 value towards 1 sale. So that's why I usually recommend weekly emails, because it allows you to have 1 sales touch point every single month with your clients, or your ideal clients rather. And so essentially within that piece of it, when you're thinking about diving into it, one of the biggest mistakes that I see is everybody is so surface level, and they're just like, for an example with Instagram, go follow 10 of your ideal clients. And then you're just like, okay, I did that. Now what's going on? Yeah. So I like to rotate in terms of with connection emails, which are more so of your story, things that are going on in your life. So for an example, I can talk about going to Chipotle once a week because my husband does IT for Chipotle, and maybe an experience I had at Chipotle and how that relates to email. You can talk in terms of with a teaching style email, which is teaching them something, but going way more in depth past the surface level thing. And it's not about giving away your whole pie. It's about giving somebody a complete start to finish so they can start to actually implement and see results from your emails. And then another one that you could do in terms of with value is simply starting a conversation. And so one of my best emails ever, actually my top email ever, is very extremely simple. It's the subject line, hey. And it basically says, hey, first name, what you up to this week? Let me know if there's anything I can do to support you. And I included a blue heart, and it said, your friend Ashley. And I got so many replies. I had so many conversations on and off social media about it. And the reason why it worked is because nobody is taking that time to ask for that invite. Yes, people are asking for replies at the end of emails, and I still do that. But a lot of times it's not very much so front and center, personalized. And that's why the one-to-one kind of idea and concept when you're writing your emails works so incredibly well, which is why I always recommend plain text emails. I know they're a little boring, but I do change the link color to the brand color. And it makes it so much easier for you to get past people's spam guard, where they don't feel like, oh my gosh, it's another sale, they're trying to get my money. And instead making them feel like they're at home and they can relate to me, and that they're like, oh my gosh, this girl who loves avocados. And, making them really feel that, as opposed to like, oh my gosh, she just wants to take my money.
Yeah. That's great advice. I wanted to make sure we touched on that too, the whole design of email, image versus text. I'm seeing such a rise of text only. And I know even for a little bit there, everyone wanted to utilize a single image, which is not good. Do not do that. I know that Canva has email templates, but I think that's steering it in the wrong direction. Yeah. So you like those text only. You feel like they've worked well for clients. They work well for you. You've got great reasoning behind it too.
Definitely. I mean, it really just comes back to user experience for me. It's really about the person on the other side of the screen. And, honestly, if they actually did work, like the actual full text ones with all the glitter and the glam, I would probably do it and fill it with avocados and sea turtles. But people don't care about that. Like, they, especially in this day and age, in terms of with attention span and what's going on in our world, they just want to know, what is it in for me? They're thinking about themselves. So when I can start emails with the word you, I can go through the process of being able to share these things with them that really connect with them, even if it is about me. That is where you win. That is when you can bypass that and to be able to really infiltrate and be like, oh my gosh, okay, she actually cares about me. She's not here to just steal my money.
It's that connection. It creates that connection point for sure.
Exactly. 100%.
That's amazing. So let's see. So some of your favorite tools, that you would recommend, ActiveCampaign, any others in terms of email?
Totally, 100%. So essentially, if you're looking for a free platform to start, MailerLite is a great option, just to get the ball rolling, just to get things started without #all the things. And then if you're looking for deliverability help and really focusing on being able to channel in why my emails are maybe going to the promo tab, you can also use a tool called Glock Apps. And Glock Apps allows you to run 3 free reports. I've worked with them before, done collaborations, and I use them specifically for clients who are really struggling with their open rates, because a lot of times it could just be that their email marketing thing got on a spam list or their email score is down. There's so much technical side to the back end of email, and that's why it's so incredibly important to lead with value, so that way things don't happen on the back end that you're just like, oh, I don't know how to fix this.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point as well. I had to mention too, my husband is also in IT, so here and there I'll have some of those questions for him.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
It's always helpful. Awesome. Well, tell me where everybody can find you.
Yes, yeah. So you can find me over at ashleyk.DeLuca.com, or you can also find me over on Instagram or Facebook at AshleyK.DeLuca.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today, Ashley. And
thank you.
I'm excited for everyone to hear it. Of course. You have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, you can find detailed show notes at brittbrewer.com/podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to hit subscribe. I'll be sharing new episodes every Monday. And in the meantime, let's connect and see what's going on in the background. You can find me on social at hi.brittbrewer. Thank you so much, and talk to you next week.